Five-man outfield for the Marlins, including Jesus Sanchez. And as we record this, Jesus Sanchez with lefty-on-lefty crimes, taking Trevor Rogers deep in a scrimmage game. Yes, sir. Big spring for Jesus Sanchez. He is making this roster. The Marlins are going with 5 outfielders. But will Jesus Sanchez be starting for the Marlins in the outfield? All digging into with Shaun Barrett on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England. And welcome to Locked On Marlins. This, of course, is your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up on Twitter at MiamiMarlins_UK. If you are listening to the podcast form, hit subscribe there too. Guys, it is your team every day, and it is Tuesday, the 28th of March. I know, I've just seen Jesus Sanchez hit a home run off Trevor Rogers. That is correct. I'm recording this on Monday evening with Shaun Barrett. But this is the Tuesday episode, guys, and likely this will be your first listen because this will drop early on Tuesday. So thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen. If you are watching on YouTube or if you are wondering if there is a YouTube channel, yes, there is, and it is called Locked On Marlins. Do you see what we did there? Yes, get over there and hit subscribe too. If you are watching, you will see Shaun Barrett is in. He is looking well and healthy. Shaun, couple of weeks off, brother. You weren't feeling too great for a while. Hope everything's good though, mate.
All good now. Yeah, it was a bit rough there, but yeah, blink and you miss it. Spring training's over. It seems crazy. It was only a couple of appearances ago that we were talking about spring arriving, and now we're already through it, and opening day's just around the corner. It
really is, mate. I mean, a couple of days away, and there's a lot to look forward to. We're going to dig into that in the second part of the show, actually, kind of previewing this Marlins Mets series, a 4-game set to get us rolling, mate. But just one final thing on spring, your main overall takeaway reaction, something that stands out to you from spring in 23 for the Marlins?
Firstly, no injuries. That's the key thing. I mean, it was pretty boring, pretty ho-hum. The offense was a bit dry. I think maybe we expected that. There were some early defensive miscues from guys in new positions. And again, that was to be expected. But we're through spring. Guys have got their reps. The rotation's got, its pitch count up. Spring's served its purpose, and we're through it healthy, and that's all you can ever ask for.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I think you've hit on the key points there. Clearly that the health, and other teams haven't been as lucky. The Marlins clearly coming through it in the main, a full body of health. There's a little twinge here, and there's a reliever or two going to the IL, but overall, nothing major has happened. It's a full clean bill of health, full roster as constructed by Kim. So, excited to go. One other thing I would say, one main takeaway is Lewis Brinson with 3 spring home runs for his new club, the Giants over there in Japan. So the king of spring still doing it. He can always swing it in March, mate. He would have been pacing the Marlins with 3 home runs in spring as well, which I find pretty hysterical, but great to see Lou still swinging it in March. I'm intrigued to see what his career ends up being, whether he ends up coming back to US baseball or Major League Baseball at some point. Who knows? But yeah, Shaun, I mean, we're through spring. I think we've officially got a roster. We kind of know what it's going to be. And I think one of the main talking points at one point was what are they going to do in the outfield? It was an interesting topic and discussion point, but in the end, the Marlins going with a 5-man outfield on this roster, and for me, the battle seemingly was kind of De La Cruz or Jesus Sanchez was maybe the battle. Actually, it wasn't a battle at all. Both those guys have made the roster. So, what's your take on this 5-man outfield more generally here for the Fish heading into the season?
I mean, it came about because obviously they brought in Gurriel and Iglesias, and the idea was that these extra guys, are they going to make the lineup? As it was just Gurriel and Iglesias has gone down to AAA. So I think in my mind, that's the right decision. I think the fact that you've got Bertie and he's got his infield flexibility, because we know that Gurriel's only going to be playing first. We know that Cooper's only going to be playing first. They'll probably both DH at times. But that then projects Soler into the starting lineup as an outfielder, not as a DH. So I think Bertie's going to be really important.
Me too.
Team. I'm concerned a little bit by the depth of it. Obviously, Iglesias is there as that backup, I guess. But for me, Sanchez, I think he deserves another shot. I mean, this isn't a situation, talking about Brinson, where he's getting opportunity. This is his opportunity now. Had a good spring. When he went down last year, he hit well in the minors, came back up and had literally a small amount of time late in the year and hit well as well. So for me, ever since he's gone down, he's played better. The attitude seems to be better. The smile still on his face. Yeah. I think it is a case of between him and De La Cruz, you've got two guys who can flex in and out of the lineup. They can both play centre field, kind of. I think De La Cruz will probably see more opportunities than Sanchez then, but then he can just play in the corners. I think Sanchez deserves a shot. I think if he can play into the season as he has done ever since he came back from his demotion, because it was a demotion. I think we could finally see Jesus be a purposeful outfielder starting Major League Baseball player for the Marlins.
Yeah, me too. Like, I think with Jesus, and the more you kind of dug into his numbers and look to see, like, firstly, the Marlins don't have a ton of lefty sticks. They just don't. And so he also had 0 minor league options because they felt the need last year to burn that option. And my sense with that was primarily just to give him a break or for something else, maybe other than baseball related. It was a bit like, we need you to take a bit of time away from maybe the major league action or center field, or just go away and find yourself. I don't know which of those it actually was, but when you dig into his numbers and look, when he's facing these righties as a lefty, the numbers look fine. And, he was asked to play in center field, which he did okay. But when you go and look at his career stats, mate, I mean, to the point about, comparing it with Brinson. Brinson had a huge leash. Jesus Sanchez, he's only just had just slightly over 600 plate appearances at the major league level. WRC, a career WRC plus of high 90s. So in his early developmental periods, and he should be now coming into fruition, let's say, or to his peak or his prime, as he's starting to piece everything together, I think there's a solid enough base there for Jesus Sanchez to take the next step this year. I do think it's about, can he be mentally right, keep the smile on his face? Equally, can he be mature enough as well in and around the clubhouse? Is he willing to put the work in as well? I think is kind of a key part though, mate. But I mean, I've been on this pod as well saying you should never face another lefty ever again. But as we hit record on this pod, he hit a massive bomb against Trevor Rogers, lefty on lefty crime there, mate. So, I mean, are we maybe undervaluing Jesus Sanchez here? And actually, could we see maybe for one of the first times in many years, a Marlins hitter being able to work with a new or a different coach and making some meaningful adjustments to their approach, their swing, that means that the results can change in a productive way? Maybe I'm looking a little bit too much into it, but it is possible, maybe.
Absolutely. I mean, it would be a huge positive for the organization.
It would be.
And I think one of the key things I saw last year about Sanchez and his swing was that when he came up to the majors, his swing got changed by the now fired hitting coach. When he went back down to AAA, he went back to his old swing, and that's what worked for him.
Right.
So I think it is a case of if it's not broke, don't fix it. Lefty pop, that's always going to be important, even if it is off the bench. I think he will see plenty of time. I think he'll get a lot of opportunities. And so far, he's running with it. And I think, the bat is, at the moment, it's league average. I mean, the defense, as I said, I remember the centre field defense being poor in my mind from what I watched. But the actual analytics aren't too bad. I mean, 2 defensive runs saved in centre field in his time there. So it is a case of he can defend at all 3 spots in a pinch. And someone's got to play when Jazz isn't, because I mean, I know he says he's going to play 155 games, and God, I hope so. I really do. But you got to balance, the realisticness of that. and the fact that you're going to need other guys to step in from time to time. I think 140 games from Jazz healthy, I would prefer that rather than trying to spread him across the whole season.
Yeah, 155 seems a lot, to be honest with you, and I'd probably like to see him take more than 1 day off a month, which is probably how the numbers would stack up. So I'd probably like to see him off his feet a little bit more often than that, But we'll wait to see. To your point, if there's a healthy year out of Jazz, then Jazz is saying that he feels he's got a shot to be in the MVP conversation if he plays 155. So or 140, I think. The reality is he'd be in the conversation. We need to see that from Marlins' perspective. But just going back to the corners and Jesus Sanchez, what's the likely situation here with Jesus Sanchez in terms of his playing time to start the year? He's been the hottest hitter in spring of anyone, to be honest with you. He's now performing in scrimmage games against a lefty. Is Jesus Sanchez right now forcing himself into a starting corner outfield spot for the Marlins here?
He absolutely could. And the key thing is not just whether he's hot, it's the rest of the guys.
Yeah.
One of the things that I liked from Jeter, even though he's gone and there wasn't much I liked about him, one of the things I did like about him was that he wanted to bring competition to the team. Yeah. And have that depth. And that's what I see in the outfield for the Marlins this year. They have that depth where if a guy isn't hitting, regardless of his contract situation, how long can the Marlins, if they want to be competitive, put up with a guy who's hitting below average? If there are other guys competing and beating them, then these guys now are literally playing for playing time. They've got to perform, or otherwise they'll be playing once or twice a week rather than 5 times a week like they'd want to.
I think that's that leads us into. I mean, this wasn't a report as such by Craig Mish, but a comment, let's say, that was on Twitter earlier on, talking about playing time and Avisail Garcia and performance. And, I think Craig, is out there now effectively saying that, if it's 2022 Avisail Garcia for the first 2 months of the year, then he's not going to be playing. So, yes, he's being paid. They've committed that money. But from what Craig's hearing, the Marlins are maybe more willing to make a move there. And if a guy isn't cutting it, someone else is going to have the opportunity, which for me is at the heart of all team sports and should be at the heart of all team sports. And so it's encouraging to hear. Overall, we'd like to see Avisail Garcia bounce back. I mean, clearly, that's what we want to see. But the results in spring have been ultra discouraging thus far. And if he starts slow, I think there's a real opportunity for Jesus Sanchez to really cement himself into a pretty much everyday spot in right field, left field, and even be backing up at center field. What about you?
Yeah, for me, I mean, Craig is very judicious with what he says and how he says it. So the fact that he's put that out there alone, to me, speaks volumes. I mean, we can say that as fans and watching a guy underperform, but it's another thing for Craig to say it. It's another thing for the team to think it. Yeah. It's a lot of money for the Marlins, but there's a precedent. There's a precedent for the Marlins eating money when they've got an underperforming player on the roster. And I think ideally, like you said, Avi bounces back. Everyone's allowed to have one season off and be poor, but it is a case of it's not just the results, it was the input. And I think you need to see that again. It is a case that it isn't just that he wasn't unlucky, like the Babbitt, all the things you look at to try and find a reason why the guy struggled. He struggled because he was just crap. And hearing that the Marlins are considering that, or at least having their mind on the idea that they're not going to put up with that anymore, that's a fantastic thing for fans to hear, that regardless of the money, you've got to perform if you're going to be playing, because no one wants to see him rolling over a ground ball to third base 200 times this season. It's no fun.
No, absolutely. And I think it's, the Marlins fans, were generally frustrated with Avisail Garcia last year. And I think as fans, if you want to see guys rewarded with, plate appearances or at-bats based on performance, and for the Marlins to show that they're willing to operate in that way, rather than just, well, we pay him $12 million a year, so he's got to be out there every day. That is not the way you should approach it. And it's not the way that the best clubs approach it either. So I think it's really interesting to see if that will be the mindset. And if Craig has put that out there, that is the mindset. So really, for Avisail Garcia, the pressure's on. The pressure is on. The pressure was already on. He's got his body in better shape. I don't know what happened last year with his body and why he came in so heavy, but he's made the adjustments. So he's willing. If it translates on the field, great. If it doesn't, then the Marlins are going to be strong enough to bench him, which I think is really encouraging. Well, maybe that's the wrong way of phrasing it, but anyway, nevertheless, let's talk about our first ad. It is our first US ad with a British twist, and it's our good friends over at LinkedIn. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you to find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's so easy to create a job post. You just get on there and just add all the details. You add that job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools also like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you to find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. You can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. That's linkedin.com/lockedonmlb to post your job, yes, for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, Shaun, let's fast forward now and think about this Mets series, mate. We've got a 4-gamer with the Mets in town. The Mets coming off more than 100 wins in 2022. Couldn't quite make it happen in the postseason, but nevertheless, they've suffered a couple of challenges, let's say, during spring. We talked about the Marlins being healthy. The Mets haven't had the same fortunate circumstance, obviously losing their closer, Edwin Diaz. They've also made some interesting roster decisions around some of their flashy prospect names that they've demoted. And I also did see they DFA'd Darren Ruff as well recently. So some decisions going on with the Mets. They come in, Max Scherzer going up against Sandy Alcantara in Game 1, which will be a stunner. Also, all eyeballs on Justin Verlander, the AL Cy Young winner of 22, heading off in what I think will be a stunning matchup made against Edward Cabrera on the Saturday, mate. That's going to be an absolute stunner. But overall, thoughts and feelings for you heading into this opening 4-game set against the Mets?
I mean, the pitching matchups are just to die for, aren't they? They're both two rotations are very high, and obviously Scherzer and Verlander, they speak for themselves. For me, Verlander versus Eddie. I mean, the age difference is crazy.
Yeah, it is.
And Verlander, for me, I watched him pitch once this spring against a split squad Miami team, and on it, the velocity. I mean, I know the velocity is not going to be what it used to be for him, but the control was poor. He didn't seem comfortable. He got hit by 2 comebackers, so that probably didn't help. But for me, it is a case of you've got the star named rotation going against the Marlins young guys, and this is going to be great to watch for sure. Yeah,
it really is. From a Marlins perspective, offensively, clearly a lot of eyeballs will be on Luis Arias, likely leading off, but also then Jazz Chisholm Jr. It's really interesting to see the way they mix and match the top of the order, mate, I think. But really, the indications seem that, Garrett Cooper, your guy, likely hitting in maybe the cleanup spot there as well, it seems. So there's going to be, I think, a lot of pressure on Coop. Equally, he's talked about, I think I've seen it relatively recently, to say he's looking to rediscover his power stroke a little bit more as well. Like, the power completely went, I say completely, but it really sapped away in 22. So I'm really intrigued to see what kind of Garrett Cooper we get in 23, particularly if we have maybe some, maybe a feeling of less pressure on his shoulders directly because there's more guys around him. But equally, is he going to find something different in his swing, perhaps? Maybe like a Jesus Sanchez, where it's like all of a sudden he unlocks something. Maybe Coop goes back, makes some changes, and the power stroke returns, which I think would be hugely encouraging for Cooper if he can add that contact, the gap power, with some actual over-the-fence power, mate, maybe hitting the cleanup spot. Who's to say that Cooper can't get back to the All-Star game in 23?
I think he could do it either way. I like the line drive double hitting approach from Cooper.
Yeah.
But as you said, he's played in the cleanup spot pretty much every game he's played in spring. The team haven't done that just because of happenstance. That's where they want to see him play. And he's had a good spring. He's hit well.
Yeah.
The power was there for me. I think, if he puts a bit more loft into the ball, the contact rate will probably come down a little bit. But the Marlins, they've got contact hitters, up and down the lineup. So it might be a case where they've just turned to Coop and said, look, put a bit of extra power into that swing. Don't hit for contact so much. A 260 to 280 rather than a 280 to 300 hitting Coop with more power, I think would be great for the Marlins, especially in the cleanup spot.
Yeah.
For me, I still prefer him as a number 2 gap hitting guy. Okay. It gives the Marlins options to do lefty-righty, which I know isn't the same nowadays with the no loogie situation. But for me, I think Coop is that bat that the Marlins can chop and change as they need him to be. And if they want him to hit for more power, then I'm not going to stop them. Because more Coop home runs is good for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think it's interesting about where he hits in the lineup. And to be honest with you, as a gap hitting guy, which he's been, in his more recent approach anyway, probably that 2-hole, suits him pretty well. Arias, the lefty, then Coop, and then Jazz, I think is a real nice, 1, 2, 3, and ideally you then have like Soler and Avisail Garcia then in 4 and 5 that really give you that threat. And I think if the big boys are delivering what they could and should be, that's probably what this optimal lineup should look like, where you've got those 3 in front, and then, the 2 big boys to follow. But we'll wait to see. I'm intrigued to see the way they construct this lineup, and I'm really intrigued to see what Jesus Sanchez's role truly is after a hot spring. I'm equally intrigued to see what Brian De La Cruz and his role is. Clearly, the kind of center field playing time isn't really there, so it's all going to depend how they mix and match effectively 4 corner outfielders into 2 spots and a DH role, perhaps. So really interesting there, mate. But overall, looking ahead to this one, though, 4 games set. Scherzer's going, Verlander's going, Senga's going to be going as well, I believe. I think on the Sunday he's scheduled. So we're going to get a good look at the Mets, top 3 guys. The Marlins, what I think have got the sexiest upside 1, 2, 3 out there in obviously Sandy, Luzardo, and Edward Cabrera, mate. It's going to be a pitching, there's going to be a lot of pitching on show. But I think for the Marlins in general, I could certainly see them nicking this series. I could see them winning this series. And honestly with you, it wouldn't stun me if they sweep the Mets. It would not stun me. Actually, no, it would. I'd be stunned, but in a good way. But there's a pathway here, I think, to the Marlins starting hot. They pitch well. Bullpen performs. There's a pathway to the Marlins at least winning this series. Where's your head at with this one? Is a sweep okay for you?
God love you, Pete. If you can't be optimistic 2 days before spring training, when can you be optimistic?
Absolutely.
I think the beginning of the season, of course, is so important. And especially when you're talking about young guys like Luzardo, Eddie, and Rogers, let's not forget him. These are guys that haven't pitched many innings. We're going to be counting on 140, 160 at a push from these guys. So the beginning of the season, when you've got these young arms who are at the moment strong, because they're going to tire as the season goes. So this is the time to be confident. This is the time to let these guys cook and see what we can get. One guy you didn't mention, David Peterson, the lefty. We know what the Marlins struggle with, and that is lefty. So
oh man, I didn't even think of that. The kryptonite.
Wouldn't it be perfect for us to smash Scherzer and Verlander and then get no hit by David Peterson? So
I know
it's going to be a tough start to the season. We're playing mostly division games as everyone is, and then there's a couple of tough teams in there as well to begin the season. So it's an important time of the year, as it always is for the Marlins, getting off to a good start. But we've talked all off season about our optimism, and you're of course the king of optimism.
I'm feeling optimistic, mate. I'm feeling optimistic right now.
That's what I'm looking for. Competitive baseball.
Yeah.
If they get hit left, right, and center, and the bats don't, the big guys got to go. It is a case of it could be a long season. So a nice competitive series would be what I'd be asking for.
Yeah, I mean, the Mets played us tough last year as well. I mean, Frankie Lindor, pretty much every game there was a home run from Lindor. Pete Alonso was probably the same. The Mets just played us tough last year. We'll see how that pans out again. I don't feel like they've had the best of springs either. The Mets, I feel like they've had a relatively poor record, and again, it's we look at wins and losses. I get that, but equally, I do think momentum in baseball helps. I feel like if you've had a winning spring and you're playing well and you're hitting well, surely that's going to help you coming into opening day rather than Avisail Garcia's end of spring like 2 for 40 or something. Like mentally, you're not, you prefer to be in a different spot than 2 for 40 in your last, 2 weeks of spring. So we'll wait to see, mate. I think it's a really intriguing series. The Marlins are led by their pitching. Can the defense hold? Are the bullpen going to get any opportunities to save some games? And what can this offense do, mate? So many question marks in the head of this season. This is Kim Ang's roster. This is how it's been designed. There is some Kim Ang risks in this roster now, and they're her risks. And she's going to be judged based on how these risks go, either positively or negatively. And I think that's one of the key storylines here for the Marlins in general this season, is how do these risks play out? We may look at it and say, wow, Kim absolutely nailed it. Or this was an absolute shit show and there's serious question marks about Kim Ang and her future with the Marlins. So I think there's a lot of variance to the Marlins number this year. There really is. Like there's 82 wins and there's 62 wins and there's everything in between, to be honest with you. With that being said, thanks for making Locked On Marlins. No, we can't go. We need the final ad. I missed the final ad, so we'll have to do that and then we'll have to go. But actually, it's a good ad. And it's a competition, guys. So stick around for competitions because you got a chance of winning something. And it's Built Bar. It's the Built March Madness. And you have a favorite bar or puff. And it's now time to make that count. Here's what you got to do to get into this competition. Everyone loves a competition. BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. Mine is that coconut puff. Ever since they had that ad campaign, I don't know, a year ago. And if you want the Marlins to win, then you'll be voting for that bar too, supporting your team and supporting your bar or puff. And when you vote, your favorite bar or puff will be entered into a draw where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built. Having all the best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door sounds absolutely sensational. And as you know, guys, they're so healthy, you don't even know it because they taste so good and they're covered in 100% real chocolate. You know it. So this competition, where do you go? Built March Madness, all one word, .com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff. And pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March. So you run out of time, but get in there, hop in and support your pick. All right, Shaun, we went long. I almost missed the ad. I mean, I'm in mid-season form here, obviously. One final one to you. I don't think you had a prediction, or you gave me it. So let's have this prediction from you. Marlins Mets 4-game series. How's it going?
I'll go 2-2, straight down the middle. I'll be boring.
I think that's still a good result, though. Like a split is still fine.
Yeah, perfect. Competitive baseball against your division. Keep at 500. That's the Marlins' target for me. Stay at 500 for as long as you can, and then make a move.
Make a move, baby.
That would be perfect for me. I spoke all off season about the idea of the Marlins getting me excited, and they've done just enough to get me excited for the season, and for the longer they can keep me engaged and keep the fans engaged and keep close to that third wild card spot.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what they're shooting for, mate. Wild card 3 is exactly what they're shooting for. For me, I'm not predicting a sweep, but what I would say is, I can certainly see the Marlins winning this series. I think the boys want to come out hot. I think the fans will be there. There will be plenty of Mets fans in there too, but I think the ballpark could be loud at certain points. I think Sandy, Luzardo, Cabrera, potentially Trevor in Game 4. The pitching's going to match up nice. I'm a little bit concerned about Verlander's spring. I think the Mets have got a couple of other things going on. They've made some roster decisions that look a bit iffy. I think the Mets could start a touch cold, and I think the Marlins could catch them cold, and I think they could win this series 3-1. Then the Twins come into town, and then the Marlins head to New York to take on the Mets again. It's going to be a real tough ask in the early part of the year. With that being said, this time, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen today. It's Tuesday's episode, 28th of March. We'll be back on Wednesday, and on Wednesday's episode, I'm going to be with the other NL East Locked On hosts. We are all coming together for our prediction podcast. Do not miss that one. I was relatively bullish, which will shock no one, on my Marlins number and also the division winner. Till then, guys, see you soon. Thanks for joining me today.